Astonishing images from inside the womb begin a fascinating saga of life.
Our planet was formed some 4,500 million years ago, and there's been life of some sort on the Earth for about the last 3,000 million years. We, though, are relative newcomers. Our ape-like ancestors emerged a mere few million years ago. Humans have evolved in a remarkable way. While all other life seems preoccupied with the struggle for mere existence, humans alone seek to make sense of their surroundings. Every age of human development has brought with it a different view of our surroundings. Each technological development, such as the microscope, has given us a new view into the world around us. In the saga of life, we'll see how revolutionary photographic techniques are giving us a fresh perspective on all living things, and especially on ourselves, and how our 9 months journey in the womb can tell us much about the development of life itself. This is life from the inside, a human embryo growing within the womb. With microphotography and computer enhancement, we can now see for ourselves how a single egg cell becomes a fully formed human being. Each of us has made the same journey. Every month, a fertile woman produces egg cells in her ovaries. Each egg cell travels through the fallopian tube. It's carried along by millions of cilia hairs. There's a frantic rush of sperm. Only one sperm out of millions is allowed into the egg. Then the barrier closes. The fertilized egg now has 2 nuclei, here in the center of the egg. They fuse, combining the chromosomes of both parents to form a unique individual. Soon the first cell division begins. Within a few hours, there are 4 cells. Which become 8 cells, which divide in turn again and again. After 6 days, the fertilized ovum has developed into a blastocyst. When the blastocyst enters the uterus, it floats delicately down to the surface.
where it becomes embedded in the lining of the womb, from which it will draw nourishment from its mother's body. Here, cell division continues, a process that doesn't end until we die.
At 3 weeks, the embryo is just 3 millimeters long. By 5 weeks, it has quadrupled in length. The features are firming rapidly, but at this stage, there are still many missing. The head is bent down to the right, above the placenta. At 7 weeks, the embryo is 2.5 centimeters long. The limb buds and the umbilical cord have taken shape. By the 12th week, hands and feet have already formed. At 16 weeks, this collection of cells looks remarkably human. Then, in 3 more weeks, it grows to about 22 centimeters. All its features are now clearly defined. As humans, we pride ourselves on our uniqueness. But among these 4 embryos, can we even tell which one is ours? It takes weeks of growth before the answer is obvious. As we grow, we reveal a remarkable link with other species. A link that not only explains our individual development, but also the development of life itself. Most of us would identify this 6-week-old embryo as human. But what about this one at a similar age? It has what looks like a human hand, but is actually the front foot of a pig. This hand-like limb is really the developing wing of a chicken. Our hands, their feet and wings share a common ancestry. Part of a 500-million-year-old evolutionary process that binds together all animals with backbones. From a bird in flight to a hunting carnivore, taking a simple blueprint and over aeons building one variation after another. Including ourselves. Evolution works by the process of natural selection. It's seen in animals that learn to fly. Taking to the air was a revolutionary step forward, refined from generation to generation of primitive birds. Similarly, other species changed over millions of years until entirely new forms developed. The saga of life began when the Earth was still young, about 3,500 million years ago. The planet was dangerous and hostile, covered with volcanoes, bombarded by meteors, and swept by violent storms. But it contained the building blocks of life: liquids, gases, and minerals. These raw chemical ingredients were the basis for the first organic molecules, most likely formed in the primordial sea. Over hundreds of millions of years, molecules developed the ability to copy themselves and to change, mutate. Mutations give organisms the flexibility to adapt to the environment. Every other living thing on Earth has evolved from these simple molecules. About 3,000 million years ago, this continuous process of copying and changing had produced primitive structures. These were the first living things: simple bacteria and the cyanobacteria, or blue-green algae. The single cells joined to form colonies, microscopic strings drifting with the current. For about the next 2,000 million years, one-celled organisms were the only life forms on Earth. They grew more diverse and even invented a new means of reproduction: sex. They also made great quantities of oxygen, changing the Earth's primitive atmosphere dramatically. And in time, allowing huge numbers of organisms to thrive, including ourselves. The microscopic cause of this revolution was the emergence of new, more sophisticated cells. It's unclear exactly how they came into existence, but it seems that groups of primitive organisms found a way to merge into larger, more complicated, and more robust structures. The new kind of cell had a nucleus containing the chromosomes, which carry the genes. It also had other specialized parts called organelles, or little organs. The organelles gave cells the crucial ability to take on different shapes and functions. One of them became the powerhouse that drives the cell, the mitochondria. The mitochondria are these red, almond-shaped formations. Only a few thousandths of a millimeter long, their tiny size belies their importance. Each mitochondrion contains a folded sheet of material that looks like the plates inside a car battery. Here, the chemical reactions that give the cell its energy take place. A human cell. Each jiggling dot inside is an organelle, tiny factories providing all the cell's needs. Eventually, the cell developed other primitive structures. Hair-like projections, for instance, providing locomotion. These are the cilia hairs. Cilia encircle the cell like tiny legs or fins, allowing it to move about and go hunting for food. Cilia even help their cells perform these strange, apparently choreographed routines. All these seemingly purposeless individual rhythmic workouts. The next great evolutionary leap occurred less than 1,000 million years ago, when organisms with more than one cell first appeared in the ocean. These creatures comprise various cells doing different jobs, all acting together as a unified entity. Perhaps they developed from large colonies of single-celled organisms, such as this Volvox globata. Over time, cells on the outer edge of the colony might have become more skin-like. Perhaps they depended on other cells inside the organism that had evolved to process food for the whole colony. However they came into being, they were the spark that lit the slow evolutionary fuse that would one day cause a spectacular explosion of life. Over the next few 100 million years, many different shapes evolved. It was a time of huge and unprecedented experiment. Some designs were admirably suited, others faced a hard struggle to exist. There are many losers in the battle of evolution. Their fossilized remains in clay and chalk stone, the only remaining evidence that they existed, yet failed to compete or adapt to changing environments. They were doomed to extinction, but others were not. All of today's creatures are their descendants. Most of the species produced by natural selection are long dead and gone, but the survivors went on to produce one of the greatest evolutionary changes in the history of the planet. About 400 million years ago, ancient relatives of this lungfish developed the capacity to breathe the air. They crawled out of the water and began to colonize the land, but they never lost their intimate relationship with their watery origins. It's a relationship even today's most advanced animals, human beings, still share. We spend the first 9 months of life in the salty water of the amniotic sac. The human embryo develops in a protective replica of the ocean. The same is true of this chicken embryo, floating in amniotic fluid inside the egg. The hard shell containing it is another evolutionary adaptation developed during the transition from water to land. There are links to a common past beneath the sea everywhere we look in the embryonic world. Humans even retain links to the gills of fish, developed hundreds of millions of years ago to absorb oxygen from water. The first sign of gills appear in fish embryos at a very early stage. Here, the gill arches are visible on the left. Before the gills mature, the fish embryo receives its oxygen from tiny arteries in the membrane of the yolk sac, which functions like a human placenta. And humans show vestiges of gills during an early stage of their development. The arches, visible below the head, look a bit like a mouth. They appear in the 4th week and for a number of days develop in the same way as gills. But after 2 weeks or so, their development changes drastically. Instead of becoming respiratory organs, they develop into the lower jaw, the larynx and the middle ear. The same traces of aquatic life can be found in other creatures that have left the sea far behind, such as this unborn chicken. Just a few days away from hatching, it sways in its own encapsulated ocean. Like the human embryo, the chick also goes through an early stage with vestiges of gills. They're visible here as small bubbles on the throat, but a few days later, they're gone. Links between present-day life and its ancestors in the early ocean are still evident in most parts of the body. We can, for example, trace the development of the human spine right back to its origins in the primitive sea squirt. Bizarrely, the sea squirt doesn't have a spine itself, but it does possess some startling similarities to human biology. The sea squirt eggs are remarkably similar to human egg cells at the moment of fertilization. And the larvae of the sea squirt strongly resemble human sperm. Although the fully grown adult has no spinal column, its larva has a spine-like cord running through its tail. But as the larva develops into adulthood, its tail disappears completely, leaving no trace in the grown sea squirt. One theory that might explain how spines became common suggests that a mutation stopped the sea squirt from maturing and kept it in the larval stage all its life, thus keeping the tail intact. The spine-like structure would then have been passed on to future generations, and one of the species that evolved from this primitive creature about 500 million years ago was the Amphioxus. The Amphioxus is a small fish-like creature with no brain, no eyes, and a transparent body, still found today in oceans all over the world. It has a crucial feature, a flexible skeletal rod called a notochord that looks very much like a spine. And that's what many scientists believe is the precursor to the modern spine. You can see it here as a narrow yellow cord that runs along the back of the Amphioxus. And in the larger creatures that were to come, it became the impressive collection of vertebrae that is the backbone of the blue whale, some 20 meters long, and the even mightier dinosaurs. The human spine is more modest in scale, though no less complex and vital. Here we can follow its development in a fetus. At 4 weeks, the spinal segments are already shaped, but still microscopic. At 5 weeks, there's a cleavage or splitting in the back, running down the center. By 6 weeks, the cleavage has closed and the spine is embedded inside the body. In this chicken embryo, the segments of the growing spine will soon develop into vertebrae and muscles. Pig embryo. And its characteristic tail, after just 3 weeks, developing along with the spine. 2 weeks later, it's more or less fully formed. In fact, every animal with a spine, a vertebrate, shows signs of a tail in its early development, even if the tail disappears at a later stage, as it will when this chick embryo gets a few days older. Again, humans are no different. In this 4-week-old embryo, the beginning of a tail extends to the right. As with the gill arches, it's a feature that echoes life's origins in the early seas. By the 6th week, the tail appears only as a small bud at the end of the spine. And by 7 weeks, all that's left is a little bulge below the embryo's growing legs. All animals without tails, from the koala to human beings, go through the same embryonic stage. No matter how different our final form, all species are bound together by a common past. All mammals and reptiles share this common inheritance. The details of evolutionary processes are still sketchy, but clues are emerging from studies of creatures such as this salmon embryo, which develops its fins from buds visible on both sides of its body. The salmon structure can give us insights into how the human body developed, as indeed can this living fossil, the coelacanth. The development of our arms and legs most likely began with a fish aeons ago, possibly the ancestors of this extraordinary creature that has unusually thick, fleshy fin roots. These advanced fins may have provided the template for the development of limbs in the first land-based animals. We know that the coelacanth has changed little over millions of years. This one swam the oceans about 400 million years ago. By examining the bone structure of its fins, we can find clues to the evolution of legs and claws. A coelacanth's fin is perfectly adapted to life underwater. Yet, within this elegant structure, we can see the beginnings of another type of limb. Was this perhaps how bones in the front fins were gradually modified over millions of years, until they developed into a new appendage, one that was needed to propel an animal over the solid land? Evolution had formed a beast that was half fish and half reptile. The migration from crowded ocean to dry land took place about 350 million years ago, after evolution had been running for 3,000 million years. atmosphere was just breathable, and there was some vegetation on the developing land masses. The first sea dwellers that went looking for a new and less competitive environment were equally at home in the water and on land. These first amphibians evolved the legs and claws that they would need to exist in their new home. Some of them found dry land so congenial that they left the waters completely and evolved into the reptiles. The most renowned reptiles of all were the dinosaurs, which dominated the Earth for more than 140 million years. The limbs of the largest of them have never been equaled in size. And yet smaller versions of those legs and arms are still found today, serving animals such as the emu or the crocodile. The more we understand of the workings of the complex process of evolution and how it has allowed the development of an incredible range of shapes, sizes, and arrangements of body parts, the more we realize the great similarities between all animals. From the fins of fishes to human hands and feet, in this human embryo, just 5 weeks old, the buds which form our limbs can already be seen. This is the arm bud, as yet nearly identical to the leg bud on the right. And this is the embryo 10 days later. The buds are now paddle-shaped and increasingly different from each other. But even at this stage, it's still hard to tell a human arm from this front leg of a pig. And the similarity between the limb buds of this bird embryo and the human embryo is equally remarkable. The left bud looks more like a human arm than the wing it will turn into. Wings may well have their origins in the arms of a chicken-sized dinosaur called Compsognathus. It's now thought that they may have transformed into something suitable for the colonization of the air. After millions of years, the structure of Compsognathus' forelimb changed. The result was a wing with a lighter skeleton covered by feathers. And this is where evolution led history's first true bird, Archaeopteryx. Long after the dinosaurs disappeared, their relatives remained to fill the skies. All around us, we can see traces of the bird's dinosaur heritage. Each bird embryo demonstrates how evolution could turn an arm into a wing. Here, the wing still resembles an arm. As it develops further, it even looks like a human hand. From this point on, the wing will grow until it's fully formed, diverging more and more from the hand. As for humans, by the 6th week of life, our hands are well on their way to their final shape. For the first few days, the similarities between all animal embryos are remarkable. But from then on, the developmental pattern, dictated by the genes, drives the shapes further apart. To create a hand rather than a wing or a fin, our genes must tell certain cells to grow and others to stop. At a crucial stage, the cells of the skin between the fingers die, revealing the final shape of the human hand. This embryo is now in its 7th week. By the 15th week, even the fingernails are clearly visible. For the bat, the program seems to run in reverse. Cells in the animal's main limb continue to grow until a membrane of skin forms between its elongated fingers. All air and land dwellers are descended from sea creatures that sought to find a less crowded and challenging environment. Constant evolution provided a vast range of animals, each adapted to its specific surroundings. In time, competition once more became fierce, forcing some species to reverse the trend and turn once more to the water. A four-legged land predator resembling a big dog began an extraordinary return to the sea about 50 million years ago. The result was the dolphin and the whale, not fishes but sea-dwelling mammals. This is the skull of that land-based predator, and this is how its shape changed during its adaptation to aquatic life. The nose hole moved up along the head, and the teeth grew smaller to accommodate a diet of fish. Whales and dolphins are a rare example of evolutionary progress seemingly making a U-turn. After they've found their ecological niche, most animals don't change. They keep the special features that have evolved to fit the environment, features that develop very soon after the egg cell has been fertilized. The chicken embryo on its journey to hatching. The pig embryo, from a human-like appearance to its ultimate form. The fish embryo, growing along an evolutionary path far from ours. And the human embryo. Whether the end result is a human or a chicken, in just a few short weeks or months, a simple collection of a few cells is transformed into a highly specialized life form. The similarities between many species are striking, as they share basically similar body shapes. Any of these animals could have evolved a large and powerful brain, but over billions of years, none of them did. Why then have human beings developed the disproportionately large skull housing our unique brain? The human brain is just the product of the same evolutionary rules that created all other living things. Yet this one major step took 3,000 million years to happen. Virtually all creatures do have some form of brain, evident from the relatively early days of their development in the womb. At 4 weeks, a cleft in the body holds the first human brain cells. At 5 weeks, gill arches form structures that will shape the face. At 6 weeks, eyes begin to appear, and the limb buds look like paddles. They grow into the center of the body. At 8 weeks, the head is rounder, the eyes have moved closer, and the fingers have appeared. Three weeks later, the growing brain helps to shape the head. The eyelids have formed. By 18 weeks, the human fetus is unlike all others, except for one group of animals. And this link holds the final proof of the human evolutionary past. A chimpanzee fetus in its mother's womb. The chimp and gorilla are more closely related to humans than any other species on Earth. Together, we form the order known as the primates. Chimpanzees have more in common with humans than, for instance, the orangutan. Humans and chimps share more than 98% of the same genes. This is an ape fetus in the 11th week. And this is a human at the same stage. During the development of both, very little distinguishes one from the other. The ape fetus and the human. The hand of the ape fetus. And the hand of a human being. Only an expert can tell them apart. After 7 weeks of development, an ape's feet are virtually indistinguishable from a human's. An ape fetus a few weeks later. And the human one at the same stage. In some ways, the ape fetus bears a closer resemblance to a fully grown human than a fully grown ape. In evolutionary terms, it was only yesterday that we both belonged to the same species. Just a few million years ago in Africa, humans became the upright walking animals that would one day spread across the world. How did humans diverge from the apes? One theory suggests that humans are the result of an ape that remained in a juvenile stage. One of the clues for this idea is that during its fetal stage, an ape's foot looks much like a human one. The ape's foot then develops further to its final hand-like form. It's also true that a juvenile ape can look more like a human than its own mother. But when it matures, it leaves these childish features behind. Even the extraordinary growth of the human brain seems to support the hypothesis. When it's fully grown, a human brain becomes 3 times larger than that of an adult chimpanzee. Yet, to make it possible for a human infant's skull to pass through its mother's pelvis, it has to remain small until after birth. Then the brain and its still pliable skull rapidly enlarge. The chimp is born with a more mature skull that doesn't allow the brain to grow much after it's born. The inability of a chimpanzee to increase its brain size after birth is perhaps what makes it ultimately less intellectually capable than humans. The workings of the evolution of life are proving to be a complex tale, with many extraordinary twists and turns that still remain to be understood. Every new baby has traveled 2 remarkable journeys. One in the 9 months from conception to birth, but also another over the 4,000 million years of our planet's history that have led to the human race in all its richness and diversity.
The International Emmy Award-winning second part of the Saga of Life, looking at the microscopic menagerie of organisms we have on our own bodies, can be seen at the same time, 8 o'clock next Saturday.